Our first slide. Yeah, so the great thing about Digital Marketing League is that you'll actually decide if I'm a good speaker or not. So again, we'll do the presentations, we'll have Q&A, and then you'll have a chance to vote on what you thought about each presentation, and definitely stick around for that every time. Every time you vote, as Cody said, you've got a chance to win some prizes. So my presentation today is about developing eye-catching content, and I'm going to use the pandemic as sort of examples, because I think it's really stark examples, of why these lessons about creating content and how to create content come into play. We're going to share some information that we kind of see. Textbroker is, we've done over 12 million articles. We do more than 100,000 articles or blogs or product descriptions or white papers or press releases, 100,000 different pieces of written content for our clients every single month in 36 different languages. We've got over 300,000 writers, over 100,000 for our US platform, textbroker.com. So we really have these unique insights into the content that thousands of SEO experts are requesting. So we sort of, you'll find out what I know about content in a few minutes here, but why do I know about content? It's because, I'm at Textbroker, and being at Textbroker, we've got this this kind of interesting position. So we would never give away anything that a particular client is doing or anything proprietary. But when we look across our entire crowd of clients and what they're doing, we definitely see some trends. I'm going to share some of those trends with you today, and I think you can kind of learn from that. The one piece, or my whole presentation, is really making the assumption that there's wisdom from what the crowd does, right? So we're going to get into the crowd of clients that we have here at Textbroker, who I think have a lot of wisdom, and I think it'll be interesting for you to see that and for us to share it. But I kind of want to start out with an example of where I think the wisdom of the crowd works. I've always had this theory, even before I started at Textbroker. But my theory is that if a movie is #1 at the box office for more than 2 weeks, or more than a week, certainly if it's more than 2 weeks, that it's a worthwhile movie to see. And I always find that interesting, right? Because when a movie's brand new, people, maybe they've seen a preview or they have a little bit of information. But I think it's interesting how sort of over and over and again, kind of the public, the crowd of people who go to movies, sort of have a good sense and a good feeling for which movie is going to be maybe not the best movie of the year, but certainly a movie that most people would enjoy watching. So if we base it on US box office revenue and we go back roughly 50 years, 1969, the #1 movie based on box office revenue in the US in 1969 was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The number 25 movie, and number 25 is not bad, right? Number 25 movie, typically you've been #1 at the box office for probably a week or maybe a little bit more. So number 25 is not bad, but I think most people have heard of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Not so many people have heard about Marooned. Marooned had Gregory Peck, it had Gene Hackman, it was nominated for a couple Oscars. So it's not a bad movie, but it's interesting that back in 1969, people voting with their kind of pocketbooks and their time going to movies, they went to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid more than Marooned, and they were right? So roughly 50 years later, no doubt that's, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid has kind of proven the test of time. If we go back just 20 years, the #1 movie was Star Wars Episode 1. Number 25 movie was Payback. You'll have to trust me on this. Star Wars is the one you want to spend your time watching, and that's the one that I think has stood the test of time. And if we go back, roughly a couple of years, 2019, #1 movie, of course, was Avengers Endgame. Huge movie. And number 25 was Godzilla, King of the Monsters. I am a Godzilla fan, so no offense to Godzilla, but I think if we look back in the years ahead, or even now, a few years later, I think we can probably all agree that Avengers Endgame is going to kind of stand the test of time. And if you had 2 hours to spend, you would do it with Avengers versus Godzilla. And so again, that wisdom of the crowd, I find really interesting. And I think we've got, tens of thousands of companies ordering content from Textbroker each year. They're from every size, every industry. We've got a lot of agencies, SEO agencies, digital agencies using us. Almost all of our clients do care about SEO. So if you can kind of see what they're doing, I think you can get some pretty good lessons out of that. So let's start. Lesson #1. And I think the lesson here is write what people want to read. Not that lesson is for most of us, right? So some companies, certainly they can dictate what people talk about. Apple, Tesla, HBO, Google. Basically, if you're a big time industry leader, when you talk about something, everybody starts talking about it, right? Google does something, all of us who care about SEO, we all know about it. We all think about it. We all write about it. We all, podcast about it. So there are companies that can kind of dictate what people talk about just because of their position. But for the rest of us, which is most of us, we kind of need to figure out what our audience is already talking about or wants to know about. And that's what we sort of need to make sure we're including in what we write. It doesn't have to be 100% of what we write, but we really want to think about what is the audience talking about and how can we sort of include that in the information that we're distributing. And so if we think about 2020, what were people talking about? Well, it was coronavirus. And so here's the first kind of statistics that I'm sharing from kind of the Textbroker crowd of clients. And this slide is showing you day by day how many articles were placed with coronavirus in the title. And you can see a couple spikes there in February and March. That was, I think, one client placing a bunch of articles. But in January, it was a grand total of 14, right? So most people, maybe you sort of started to hear about coronavirus, but we certainly didn't realize what it was going to become. February, it was 83. And then in March, sort of jumps up to 418. But wait a second. So this chart is the same information, just presented a different way. Instead of presenting it day by day through March, I've presented it here month by month. And you can see that March, that 400 plus that were ordered in March, that was actually a peak. And it goes down in April, and then it really goes down in May, and it sort of gets to a pretty, stays there, but goes to a pretty low level throughout the rest of 2020. So wait, if they're not talking about coronavirus, maybe it's COVID. So here's a chart of articles ordered with the term COVID in the title, and you can see that you start to hear about COVID in March, and I think the middle of March, I think, is when the World Health Organization officially kind of said, hey, COVID is a pandemic, and so we see the peak in terms of number of articles around COVID is in April, not in March. It kind of stays pretty high through the summer, and it's dropped off a little bit towards the end of the year, but still at a pretty good level. 200 articles a month is a pretty good level. And then maybe you would say, well, pandemic, people are talking about the pandemic. So here's the number of articles with pandemic in the title. Again, not really starts to go up in March, really nothing in January and February. Then the World Health Organization talks about a pandemic. So in March of 20, people start talking about a pandemic. It jumps into April, and it stays pretty steady through the rest of the year. Never gets quite to that level that coronavirus got to or COVID got to, but it's there. So you could say coronavirus or COVID or pandemic, kind of whatever, right? Like people are talking about it. So do we really care about these terms? If you add it all up across COVID, coronavirus, and pandemic, you can see the total is almost 1,000. Different articles ordered in the month of April, stays pretty high throughout the rest of the year, does come down a bit, but still above 300 as we exit 2020. But I would say lesson number 2 is that keywords do matter. And so, no, it's not whatever. As your audience changes the words that it uses and the words that the keywords it uses when it searches on Google or other search engines, you need to change as well. You need to adapt to that. And so when I talk about the wisdom of our crowd, why do I think they're pretty smart? Because here I'm going to show you the trends for coronavirus, COVID, and pandemic, and you're going to see that it's pretty similar to what our crowd of clients is ordering. So here's the Google Trends for coronavirus. And Google Trends, if you don't know about it, a fantastic tool for you to kind of get a sense of what people are thinking about, talking about, and also exactly which term they use to talk about it. So you can just do a Google search for Google Trends. It'll be the first result. You can type in a keyword and you'll get a graph that looks something like this. So this is the graph, from January to December of last year for the term coronavirus. And so what Google is telling you is, kind of 100 is the peak, right? So 100 is the day that the most people were searching for that term. And then the number you see for every other day is kind of relative to that peak. So coronavirus, sort of nothing in the beginning of January, a little bit of a spike there in February, a big peak in March, And then it really comes down a lot, especially given where it was in March. And now if we look at the same Google trend for COVID, right, not a whole lot in January, February, even into March. That middle of March, it really starts to rise. And you can see the peak for COVID is actually sort of later in the year, but pretty steady, right? So peak in kind of early April, peak in sort of June, July. I mean, this chart almost looks kind of like the case count, right? We had these waves of cases of COVID. And so as the caseload goes up, you can kind of see people doing more searches for COVID, which makes a lot of sense. And then pandemic. And again, I think the peak here is right in that March period when World Health Organization starts talking about it. And then it sort of quickly comes down, but stays at a pretty good level, pretty flat throughout the rest of the year. And if we look at all three of these together, so coronavirus in blue, COVID in red, pandemic in yellow, you get a sense of relative to each other. COVID and pandemic never got nearly as high as coronavirus did back in March. But you can see, sort of in the, I guess, May, June timeframe, the red line crosses the blue line. So that feeling of like, oh, people are using COVID more often than they use coronavirus. That's definitely true. And I find that interesting because I still call it coronavirus. But that's why you never want to go off of what you personally are like, oh, I think I do this, so that should govern my marketing strategy. No, or my content strategy. No, not at all. Right? Always kind of look at the data, look at what your audience is actually doing. That's way more important than what you think probably makes the most sense. So I still call it coronavirus, but clearly I'm in the minority. More people refer to it as COVID. You can see pandemic kind of gets washed out a little bit relative to the others, but pandemic kind of rises in March and does sort of stays at a certain level, never gets as high as the other two. And I think what's interesting is that chart is not exactly the same as the chart I showed you for Textbroker, but it's similar. So again, these are the number of articles ordered by month for coronavirus in blue, COVID in red, pandemic in yellow. And you can see that, COVID eventually overtakes coronavirus. It does it quicker, with our Textbroker clients than it did with the Google Trends. Pandemic also sort of higher, at a higher level than what you would see in Google Trends. But my point here is that our crowd of clients, again, this is across thousands of clients, they are sort of, I don't know if they're going to Google Trends, but they're kind of realizing, hey, you know what? My audience is using the term COVID and not so much coronavirus, and so I should be using COVID. And so I'm going to order an article with COVID in the title instead of coronavirus. And so again, that's sort of a key lesson, that these keywords do matter, and they don't just matter for Google. I think it just matters that you are in tune with your audience, right? If you're using the words that your audience is using, then I think your audience kind of, feels like, you're reacting to what they're doing. And hopefully we don't have to be sort of matching our audience with respect to diseases, but, it goes for sort of almost everything, the way your products or your industry or, whatever the terms are that are in use for the products and the services you sell, you want to make sure you're using the same terms as your audience. One sort of side question, which I kind of started looking at these numbers sort of maybe the third quarter of 2020. And I was kind of like, well, we know the vaccine is coming. So it'd be interesting to kind of understand, is our crowd of clients getting ahead of that, right? This was sort of October timeframe. The vaccines sort of started to appear in December. So the question was, should you get ahead of that if you can kind of predict the future and that people will be talking about vaccines? And in the same way that the pandemic impacted every one of our businesses, some good, some bad, but it impacted pretty much every business in the world. We know that vaccines are going to impact every business in the world. And so should you start talking about it early? And I thought what was interesting to look at what our crowd of clients did is the answer would be no, kind of a very clear no. So if we look at this trend, I've now added in green, I've added the term vaccine. And again, it gets washed out a little bit, but you can see hardly anybody is searching for vaccine throughout 2020. And then it starts to rise as we get late in the year, and it actually passes the blue line. It passes coronavirus in terms of number of searches as we get into December when the vaccine starts to roll out. But you can still see COVID is kind of being searched for more than the word vaccine. So when I went back and I looked at our Textbroker clients, they ordered just 6 articles with vaccine in the title in September, 6 in October, and 6 in November. So hardly any articles in September, October, or November. And then it was 27 in December, and then it kept rising into early 2021. So what does that mean? So our clients were not getting ahead of it. They were waiting for kind of vaccines to come out. They were waiting for people to see what vaccines could do or how they would impact businesses and life in general. And then they started writing articles about with vaccine in the title and about the vaccine. So I think that's pretty interesting. They were not trying to kind of get ahead of it. They were waiting for people to actually search for it and talk about it. And then they started producing content about that. So the lesson is you don't necessarily need to get ahead of something, but certainly when you're planning, you can be prepared, right? We all knew the vaccine was coming. We all probably had a sense of how that was going to impact our businesses, our customers, our services. And so certainly as you're planning out your content or have a content calendar, you want to know what's coming and you want to plan for that, but you don't necessarily need to be ahead of your audience on that. And I'll give one kind of general tip, which is we say, well, we're planning out our content. Can we really predict what our audience is going to care about? And I would say yes. You may not know exactly what they're going to care about with respect to your specific business, but you definitely know, when it comes around to February, people care about the Super Bowl. They care about Valentine's Day. They care about Easter in the spring or back to school in late summer. Obviously, the holidays, that's what people are talking about. And this goes back to lesson number 1, right? Which is that, if you're Google, you don't have to worry about this. But for the rest of us, if we're not sort of this big industry leader, we need to write what people want to read, right? So we want to give our audience the information it wants to know at the right time. And so, again, we want to kind of, we can predict a bit the future. We can predict with certain things what people are going to be talking about. And as you kind of plan out your content, it's good to think about those things and prepare for them. You don't want to be talking about the Super Bowl in December because your audience doesn't care about it then. But you can be planning in December, knowing that the audience will be thinking about it in February. Again, that was lesson number 1. Lesson number 2, the keywords matter both for Google and your audience. And then a common question that we get, and I'll pivot into lesson number 3. Common question we get is I know I need more content, but what should I write about? I know I can kind of predict the future. I know what people are talking about, but what specific topics should I be writing about? And so lesson number 3, and we see this being practiced by our crowd of clients all the time, it's really about knowing your audience, right? What are their needs? What frustrates them? What are they interested in? Not just with respect to your products and services, right? But just in general. And I think one of the ways you can kind of figure out, or one of the ways you can sort of learn a lot about your audience is social media. And I think a lot of people go, oh, social media, yeah, I use that for marketing. I use that to push out messages about my company and about my services. But we've always found that one of the biggest benefits of social media is listening, right? Sort of watching how they react, what gets them excited. Obviously, you can communicate with them over social media. You can ask them questions. You can do surveys. And I think that's sort of it's like gold. That is gold. That information is kind of gold in terms of planning out your content, figuring out what you want to write, because you can see what the audience cares about. Obviously, you can do Google Analytics. There's other tracking software. You want to watch when you publish something. You want to kind of figure out, okay, what performed well, what struggled. We get this all the time, right? We have a client says, hey, I worked on this great piece of content, 2,000 words, took me a long time. I was sure it was kind of brilliant, and it kind of fell flat. And then I happened to do something pretty quick and it happened to mention the Super Bowl and it kind of took off. Okay, so you're frustrated because you don't think that's what your audience should be reacting to, but that's what they reacted to. So don't fight the audience. Try to learn as much as you can about them. Definitely kind of listen to them, interact with them, understand what they care about. It's much more about what they care about than what you care about. And so one of the best ways to know about your audience, and I would recommend this even for relatively small companies, is what's called a persona project or persona survey, right? So trying to, in that effort of really understanding what your customer looks like, you can do a survey, and it should be a pretty detailed survey. You probably want to compensate your clients if they participate, because you want to be able to ask them a lot of questions, some personal questions. So I'm going to use Textbroker as an example. We did a persona project. What you're seeing here is our website from probably 4 or 5 years ago. So this is an image, there's a smiling woman, she's holding a pen, we're a writing company. We're like, oh, okay, this seems like a good image. But this was an image that we picked based on just sort of our own gut feel, right? We're like, oh, we think this makes sense. And then we said, you know what, let's do a persona project. What is the kind of typical Textbroker client? What age are they? Is it male, female? We asked about like kind of income. We asked, what frustrates them with respect to creating content. Where do they go to learn more about content? What kind of what kind of websites do they do their reading? We asked them all sorts of questions, trying to get a feel for who they were, how much budget do they have to spend, what's their title. And because Textbroker helps so many people, from small companies to huge companies, we didn't end up with kind of one persona. We ended up with several. A lot of companies, you typically sort of narrow in on that one customer. And when you do have that kind of picture of the theoretical ideal customer, right, you kind of should know, hey, the average age is this, again, it's male, female, or whatever. And so when we did that, even though we had these multiple different personas, we did find that overall, many more men using Textbroker than women. We didn't plan it that way. I can't give you a good reason for that. It was never our intent. I don't think it's anything that we did. I think it just happens to be what it is. And again, we're listening to our audience. We're sort of watching who our audience is, what they are. Turns out more men use Textbroker as clients than women. And so we said, well, so maybe instead of having the smiling woman as kind of the main image on our homepage, maybe we should make the person on our homepage kind of look like what we think our customers look like, what our clients look like. So we ended up with this image, kind of a hipster guy. He's wearing the glasses, he's got the beard, he's got the red and black checkered shirt. So yeah, we think that's kind of roughly, obviously our audience, our customers look like all different things, but if we had to sort of pick kind of the median or the middle one, we think it would look like that. So we did an A/B test, right? So half the people who came to our website got the smiling women, half the people got this guy. And so, right, anytime you make a major change on your website, our recommendation would be to kind of test it out. Don't just, again, go with your gut. Make sure the data is telling you, that you get sort of more people sticking around on your website, more people converting from either the A or the B. So the A in this case was the smiling woman, the B was this man. And so literally the day we made this change to our homepage, we had this Facebook post. So this is a Facebook post from one of our clients. And so he went to Textbroker that morning, and he happened to be the 50, in the 50% that got the guy instead of the woman. And you could see we got this pretty right? He's got the glasses, he's got the beard, he's got the red and black checkered shirt. And his comment on Facebook is, when you realize Textbroker USA copied your style. So he's got our website in the background, and obviously him. And number one, he's exactly right. And that's exactly what we were trying to do, right? The theory was, hey, if we have an image of somebody on our website who looks like our customers, that'll make our customers feel, they'll feel like, oh, okay, this company's in tune with me, maybe more likely to convert. So I think the question for all of you is kind of, how well do you know your audience? I don't imagine that you're going to kind of have this exact level of a match, but it certainly should be what you strive for. Okay, so let's go on. There's 2 more lessons. Lesson number 4 is that over time, article length has increased. So what you're seeing here is year by year, what is the average number of words per order? And again, this is totally driven by our clients. Our clients come to Textbroker and they tell our authors, hey, I want 300 words, I want 400 words, I want 1,000 words. It is totally up to them. So again, this is kind of a wisdom of the crowd kind of thing. And what I think is really interesting is that year after year after year, the number of words that our clients are requesting in terms of what they want our authors to write goes up. Now, do not take away from this slide that everything you do should be 660 words. That's not what we're trying to get across here, right? If you have a product description, it's probably going to be shorter. If you've got sort of a real detailed article, white paper, obviously it's going to be longer. So I'm not suggesting that everything you do should be 660 words. What I'm just saying is the trend is interesting. The trend is that, over time, if you are using content as part of your marketing and you want to compete with, your others in your space who are also producing content, I think the lesson from this is that more is what you need, right? If you believe in the wisdom of the crowd, if you believe in the wisdom of Textbroker's clients as a whole group, clearly as time goes by, they are, asking for content that is longer rather than shorter. And if we wonder, like, well, so why is that? I believe the number one reason is Google, right? Every year there's more competition, more people doing more content marketing, more content created. So to sort of be high in the search engine results, you kind of, how do you compete, right? Longer text is one way to do it if it's compelling, right? So that's another lesson I get, or sub lesson here, is don't just make it long to make it long, right? I think if it's got filler and it's not interesting, that actually could hurt you, right? If somebody comes to your page and they see like huge blocks of text and it's not that interesting, they're going to bounce back to Google. They're going to go somewhere else. That's yet another thing, sort of a sub lesson, is break it up, right? So even if you have longer amounts and you feel like that's what you need to compete, it should not just be one long block of text. Make sure there's, images, videos if you've got them, or at least bullet points, spaces. Remember that a lot of people are reading your content on their phone. So you do want to stay away. If you follow this trend and you're like, okay, I get it, Philip, I do need to probably, lengthen what I'm typically doing. If you haven't done that in a few years, be very conscious of, sort of how you present it. It can't just be one big block of words. So, kind of going down the page. But I think what's the second point on this page is that we know reader attention has decreased over the past decade. Right, every study I read is kind of that the average attention span for people has gone down. They've got so many distractions. So I find it interesting that the trend is to give people longer and longer content, even when we know people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. So I think this trend, if we believe that it's a wise trend because we believe in the wisdom of the crowd of Textbroker clients, I think it's tied more to Google than to necessarily listening to your audience. Which is funny, right? Because Google always tells you, oh, just listen to your audience, do what's in the best interest of your audience, and trust us, we'll rank you better if you do that. So it seems like a bit of a disconnect here, and I think it's really being driven by that competition. Lesson number 5, our last lesson here, is about quality, right? So for people who don't know Textbroker, we rank our authors between 2 stars and 5 stars, and that's just solely based on the quality of their writing. Right, so a 4-star writer is a better writer than a 2-star writer. 5-star writer is kind of a professional level freelance writer. And so this last chart I've got kind of shows you going all the way back over 10 years, Q4 of 2010. Actually, a typo here. That should be Q2 of 2021. So this is last quarter. So if we go back to Q4 of 2010, and I specifically did it Q4 2010 because Panda. The first Panda update happens in sort of first quarter of 2011, and then Penguin, and then lots of updates since then. But if we look at kind of the Textbroker crowd of clients going back before the first Panda update, you can see it's a pretty even mix between kind of 3-star using 3-star authors, requesting 4 or 5-star authors. Not as many people using 2-star authors even back then, but it's a pretty decent percentage of the number of pieces of content that we did, right? So this is our total number of different pieces of content that we were delivering to our clients, and you're seeing the quality level at which they ordered at. So now we go forward to again 2021, last quarter, and we look at all the orders, the thousands and tens of thousands of orders from our clients over this time period. Are they ordering 2-star, 3-star, or 4 or 5-star? And you can see huge change, right? Which doesn't, again, this is not, I think, earth-shattering information, but I just think it's an interesting trend. It's certainly a trend you should be following. So very few Textbroker clients as of now order at the 2-star level. Some still order at the 3-star, but far less than they used to. And the vast majority of the content that's being ordered from us is 4 or 5-star. And like I said, it makes sense. Not only do you need to write longer if you want to compete, you need better writers and better quality content to compete. So it can make sense. So that's it for me. Again, hopefully these lessons are good. I wish we didn't have to go through a pandemic to learn them. But I thought, especially that coronavirus versus COVID, it's very rare that you see such a change in very short period of time in terms of the vocabulary or the keywords that people are using. So I thought it was actually kind of interesting because that doesn't happen very often. And I'm sure in your industry, your business, that probably doesn't happen very often. It's not going to happen kind of over a month or two, but it's definitely something you want to be watching for. And as things shift over time, you kind of want to shift along with them.
Thank you, Phillip. We appreciate your time and your presentation and filling in last minute for Niels. I think now we're just going to go ahead and do some Q&A if that's all right. I know Richard just at the end there had a quick question about with the different star levels. Perhaps this is a good question for you, being the CEO of Textbroker. He wants to know how those get rated, how we place those authors in the different 2, 3, 4, and 5-star.
Yeah, I believe Textbroker is the only content creation company where we dedicate a ton of resources to evaluating quality. We think that's critical. If a client comes to us and says, "Hey, I want 4-star writing," we want to be sure that any writer, 4-star writer who picks up that assignment is at that quality level. So what we do when an author comes to Textbroker, we ask them to do an original writing sample. And so we have an internal team for the US site, textbroker.com. Those people are in our Las Vegas office. So we've got an internal team kind of reading these writing samples, and we sort of say, okay, based on the writing sample, we're going to give you an initial rating. That allows an author to write 5 articles for our clients. But every time they write, we actually step in between and sort of make sure that, our initial rating. So if we rate somebody originally a 4-star, after their first assignment for a 4-star assignment, we will step in and just double check it, make sure it's 4-star quality. We got that right before it goes off to the client. Once they get through those first 5 articles, we kind of do a reevaluation. Did we get that right or not? If we did, hopefully they stay a 4-star. If somehow, we were maybe off, we would kind of put them to 3-star. And then they're free to kind of go to write as much as they want. But we do come back over time. So the authors never know exactly when they're going to get rated. They don't know which exact assignment is going to be kind of picked by our QA team to be reviewed. So they're always hopefully on their toes. And like I said, I think we devote far more resources to quality assurance than any other company I know of. I think a lot of companies do rely on just clients. Hey, if the client rates this person good, kind of like eBay or other places, right? You just sort of rely on the crowd, rely on other people. And while I trust our crowd of clients in many, many ways, the one place where we do not trust our clients, it'll sound bad, but we don't trust our clients is when they rate authors, because we've seen this over and over. We can have 2 different clients. They're in exactly the same industry. They order essentially the same article about the same topic, and they may get something that looks similar. And one person's like, "Oh, this is great. Thank you so much." And another person's like, "Oh, this is terrible." So content is just very subjective. And so that's the one place where we do not trust our crowd of clients. All the ratings for our authors are based on our internal team. We've got a very strict set of guidelines. All of our people are trained on those. So we hope that means that when you request a 4-star author, you're getting somebody who really is at that quality level.
Perfect. Another question, and you brought this up when you were talking about the hipster guy and the personas, is let's say you don't already have an audience that's going to your website on a daily basis. The question is, where do you find that A/B test audience?
Got it. That's an interesting question. Yeah, and I would say that makes it difficult, right? If A/B tests, again, the advice here, right, is follow your audience, follow the data, kind of let them lead you. And I would say if you don't have that big of an audience or you don't have that much data, then the worst thing you could do actually is to kind of do A/B tests, right? So if you've got 10 people coming to your website every day, don't do an A/B test with, we're 5 and 5. It's just not going to be statistically relevant. So you're probably going to have to go off-site, kind of go other places to sort of figure out what makes sense. And the good news is, right, there's a lot of websites that'll give you some interesting insights into other sites, other websites, what they're doing. So Alexa is a good example, but there are others. So if you're, whatever you're in the, you sell flowers, or you're just starting to create your website where you want to sell flowers, go to, either the big ones, the 1-800-Flowers, the FTD, go to Alexa, kind of see what their audience looks like. Now, if you've got a specialty and you're trying to kind of differentiate yourself with a niche, then maybe that's not the best place to go. But at least I would still go there just to get a feeling, kind of understand what their audience looks like. Again, I think Alexa will tell you how many male versus female, roughly what the age groups are, where they're coming from. But if you're trying to kind of have a niche, maybe look at other websites in the flower industry that also have taken that approach, have a niche, and kind of look at what they're doing. So yeah, unfortunately, if you're just getting started or you just don't have a lot of traffic, it makes it much, much more difficult to kind of figure those things out from your own website. And so then you have to kind of look at kind of people who are running websites that are somewhat similar to yours.
Cool. I'm going to piggyback off that a little bit with what you said using Alexa. It's a question I get asked a lot, which is where we work in content day in and day out, people always ask, what are your favorite tools to use? Probably both free and paid. And you mentioned Google Trends is a good one. Just kind of, if you want to share perhaps some good free and paid tools to use in terms of content marketing.
That's a great question. And we've, part of our content marketing strategy, we have a great blog post about that, and we update it from time to time because tools do change over time. So I would recommend you go to the Textbroker blog or do a Google search, because I think we rank well, especially if you put Textbroker in there, sort of Textbroker, top content writing tools or content marketing tools. So there are so many, and a lot of companies that offer tools like that we actually partner with, especially when it's in kind of the keyword optimization space or keyword research space. So I don't want to play any favorites. We have great partnerships with lots of different things. The one thing I will recommend is that you use them, right? So definitely when you're starting to plan out your content, definitely kind of, number one, content calendar, right? And so again, I don't have a very specific content calendar tool to recommend, but I would Google content calendar planning tool and look at the various choices there. You definitely want to plan out your content. And so even if it's just an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet, that's fine, right? If you're just getting going, but you want to plan out most people do it week by week, kind of, hey, this is what I'm going to publish on my blog this week, or these are the social media posts I want to do this week. And one other lesson that we find from our crowd that I didn't mention in this presentation is about consistency and meeting expectations. So you definitely want a content calendar tool, because a lot of times we see this, right? Like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm gonna do blog posts, and it's a client who hasn't sort of planned it out, and so they have this huge head of steam, and they order, let's say, 10 things, and they're publishing, and then they kind of get distracted. Something else comes up, and suddenly they disappear for 2 months, 3 months. Like, no, that's not good. And so yeah, if you have that content calendar and everybody in the organization, or even if it's just you, it kind of keeps your feet to the fire. Like, oh, okay, yeah, it's on my calendar. I have to publish, every Friday. So consistency is important. Don't do kind of a big burst and then sort of disappear, and then a big burst, 3 months later. Your audience gets confused by that. It's hard to build up an audience. So yeah, so I'm not going to pick up a specific content calendar tool, but that is crucial, even if it's just Excel. And then if we kind of step forward in the content creation process, you now know, when you're publishing. You're trying to figure out what to publish about, and hopefully some of the things I mentioned in my presentation are helpful there. But yeah, definitely be using a keyword tool. There are so many. There are free ones that aren't bad, and then there's lots of paid ones. Paying a certain amount per month. I think that really depends on how big of a company you are, how much budget you have to spend on that. Paid ones, as you would imagine, tend to be kind of better, sort of more detailed than the free ones. But if you're just getting started, free ones are definitely worthwhile. Yeah, and then on the backside, in terms of measuring, which we would always recommend, measuring how the content is performing, Google Analytics seems to kind of be the ubiquitous one. It's surprising to me sometimes how many really big companies use Google Analytics. We use something called KISS Metrics in connection with Google Analytics. So again, there's a lot of tools in terms of kind of tracking. But again, my advice would be definitely track, right? If you're just publishing and sort of moving on and not watching, again, that's not good, right? You should only be publishing if you know what the intent and the goal of that content is, and if you're able to measure it. And then that's how you learn. That's how you figure out what your audience likes, what your audience doesn't like, and adapt your titles and your topics and your keywords to make sure you do better next time.
Yeah, and Natalia brings up something in the chat that says it's probably a good idea to batch them weeks in advance. So if the day-to-day gets the best of you, obviously you're not kind of behind it. So I thought that was a good point to bring up. And you brought it up a little bit in talking about, the length of the article and how it's increased over the years. And I know one of my pet peeves, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but when I Google a recipe and all I want is that recipe, but for some reason, because of obviously the trends in Google and stuff, I have to read 1,000, 2,000 words before I get to it. So I guess my question is, where is that balance between Google says like right for the user, but yet if you search for a recipe, they're obviously rewarding these people who have 2,000 words instead of just a quick blurb and a recipe.
Yeah, no, I probably should have used that example in my presentation. I love that example because recipes, right? Google hates plagiarism. They hate duplicate content, and we have people come to Textbroker for recipes. They ask our authors to kind of get them recipes. And we run everything that our authors create. We run it through a plagiarism check. Our authors know that they can't plagiarize, but obviously we want to be certain that we're not that there's no plagiarism happening on Textbroker. And recipes is one of the toughest ones. Half pound of butter, right? There's sort of not another way to say that. And so recipes it's a great example because there is going to be so much duplicate content. When you chocolate chip cookie recipe, between might be different on the margins, but most of the ingredients there are going to be exactly the same, and there's not that many ways to sort of list out to word the list of ingredients and the list of steps. And so I think that it's a great point, right? So how do you, if you really want to rank highly on chocolate chip cookie recipe, what do, right? Your content is, you're new. Your content is going to be very duplicate of all the other chocolate chip cookie recipes out there. And so, your only choice, and Google kind of forces us into this, is to write a whole bunch of other words about chocolate chip cookies and chocolate chip cookie recipes, even though it's not what your user wants. So I think that's a perfect example of this sort of Google telling you one thing, but then, not sort of being realistic. In that if you want to rank highly, you got to differentiate yourself somehow. So that's a pretty stark one. And I don't have a good recommendation for all of you recipe people out there. I don't know what else you can do. Obviously, there's link building, and you're going to hear from Brendan Hopkins about that. So there's some other strategies you can use beyond your content. So that's maybe something to think about. But when it just comes to the content, I don't have a good recommendation there. In terms of, let's sort of widen out. I think my biggest advice around length of content is tied to competition, right? So I think the number one reason you see longer and longer things is because there's more and more competition. So I think if you're in a business or a sector where there's not a lot of competition, I would be the last person to tell you need to do 1,000-word things or 2,000-word things, right? So if there's only 2 chiropractors in town, right, and you're one of them, and the other chiropractor hasn't sort of figured out content marketing yet, you need to write something, right? You need to have a website, you need to have some content on there, but it doesn't need to be that long because your competition is very little. And when somebody searches for chiropractor in your town, Google knows where they are, and Google's not going to show them a New York City chiropractor or an LA chiropractor, right? They're going to kind of look around. Okay, this person is in this one town. Who are the chiropractors in town that are close to them? Because Google wants to give you a good result. And so you might have 100 words on your page or 200 words on your page. If you don't have a lot of competition, that's fine. That's enough. And you don't have to drive yourself crazy. If you're trying to sell flowers online, you're in trouble, right? You've got huge competition. And again, what we've seen from our clients is the way they try to differentiate themselves is by going longer. And again, that trend is one of the more remarkable ones, in that you would think maybe 1 year it would stall or go backwards. Every year for the last 10 years, it's the average length of the content our clients are ordering goes up.
Cool. I think we have time for probably just one more question. And you've obviously been in the industry a lot longer than I have, but the lead into this question is, when I first started, I would get frustrated because you publish content and it seems like it just takes forever to get results. Whereas you can do Google ads, you can do Facebook ads, and immediately you're seeing this traffic come in. You can see the analytics behind it. So I would say to you, with all this experience, if you were just starting out, let's say you're going to go start your own website, when it comes to digital marketing, content marketing, what is probably like the first thing you would do, or perhaps even the advice you would have to give to somebody when they're just starting out?
I think, again, it's right. As we've talked about, our customer base is huge, from small companies to big companies. So I'm a little reluctant to kind of say, oh, there's one formula for everybody. So I do want to say it kind of depends on, again, what sector are you in, how competitive it is. But I think, if you're just getting started, you're going to have to kind of pay to play. Right. So we talked about the fact that if you're selling flowers and you're trying to compete from just a pure content writing, content marketing perspective and trying to do it just through organic results, that's going to be almost impossible, right? It's going to be almost pretty much impossible to try to crack that first page when you're this kind of tiny upstart. Unless, you happen to do something that kind of goes viral. But those are hard to predict. So if you're trying to sell flowers and get started, you should be buying Google ads, right? Those go above the organic results, right? You only pay per click. There's a reason that Google's a $2 trillion company or something. You're getting started, you're going to need to pay to play. And I'd say as you start to build your audience, as you start to build your business, build your website, then content marketing becomes important. But again, go back to that example. If you're, a new chiropractor in town and there's only one or two others, you probably don't have to actually do that much. You could really focus on building the best chiropractor website in your town, and that will actually work very quickly, even though you're the new entrant, right? So again, I always like to give sort of, simple answers, but I think this is one where it does depend a lot on the competition. If it's really competitive, have content marketing has to be part of your strategy, and sort of doing good things and getting them out there on Facebook or social media, because people aren't coming to your website because they've never heard of it because you just got started. So it definitely should be part of your strategy, but you're going to have to kind of pay to play. And then as you build up, I think you can shift. What we've seen from companies that are already at a reasonable size, and again, it's not just us, study after study shows that the return on investment from content marketing and getting ranked highly in Google on the organic side is almost always higher than the return on investment from just buying Google ads, where, you get that user, but then as soon as you stop the Google ads, the traffic goes away. So it should be in your long-term planning, should be in your strategy. But if you're just getting going, kind of gauge where the competition's at and what you have to do. You might just have to pay up to get going.
Awesome. Well, once again, Phillip, we appreciate your time filling in last minute. For everybody that's in the conference, Phillip will be joining me for, I believe, the Q&As for all the speakers.
Yep.
As the commissioner, that's his job, to make sure things, all the players get along. We have some good questions, great conversation. So with that, I'm going to share my screen again. I know